George R.R. Martin hasn't made much progress on the Winds of Winter recently.
Shame. Shame.
Which begs the question, when will the Winds of Winter arrive? And, to be brutal about it, will George R.R. Martin live long enough to complete A Dream of Spring? In this video, I'm going to have some fun with numbers and try to use mathematical forecasting to answer these questions, so we can predict if we'll ever get the ending to A Song of Ice and Fire we all deserve, or if we'll be stuck with the awful show ending forever. So, no spoiler warning today, just maximum geekiness and maybe some scary numbers. I really hope you enjoy. Let's start off by taking a look at how fast a writer Martin has been through his career. This question is actually quite complicated because he's often writing chapters for multiple books at a time, and he also has a lot of other projects on the go. TV shows, Dunk and Egg novellas, and in-world history books. So let's keep it really simple to start with, and just focus on how many pages of the mainline novels he's been outputting a year. We know that Martin gave his agent a 200-page preview of Thrones in 1994, so let's start there because we don't really know how fast his progress was before that. Over the next 7 years, he finished Game of Thrones, as well as Clash and Storm. It's hard to disaggregate these because there's a lot of overlap in the writing of them, but overall, that means Martin wrote more than 2,200 pages, including editing and rewrites, over the course of 7 years, or roughly 370 pages a year. He was actually really prolific in his 40s, because most authors are not able to put out the equivalent of a complete medium-sized novel per year, but after Storm is when he really started slowing down. Feast and Dance started off as a single book, so let's take those together as well. By the time George had finished them, they had taken 11 years and he was 63 years old. That's 164 pages a year, including all the editing and rewrites. This, by the way, was when the Game of Thrones TV show first hit the screens, and that coincided with another slowdown.
You can smell the shit from 5 miles away.
We don't know exactly where Martin is with Winds, but from what I've been able to dig up, it seems like he was at 1,100 pages at the start of 2024, with another 500 to go. That means his pace has dropped to about 85 pages a year since 2011, which is pretty slow and about a quarter of what it once was. So, for our first model, let's keep things really basic and assume Martin keeps going at the current rate. At that rate of 85 pages a year, it will take him 6 years to finish Winds, and if we assume Dream might be around 1,000 pages, that will take another 12 years. He'll be 94 years old when he's finished, and it will land in 2042. Whether a 94-year-old can even write at the quality George does is up for debate, but it could happen, even if it's longer than any of us would like to wait. But now, let's look at an even worse case. What if he keeps getting slower and slower over time?
The future is shit. Just like the past.
A reasonable theory might be that George is just slowing down with age, along with getting distracted by more and more new projects. If we plot the data points we have using his average rate of output since 1994, it looks like this. But in reality, his decline in output probably hasn't been in big steps like this. What we can do instead is model a smoothed out trend. I drew trend lines using both exponential and power fits, and they give us pretty similar lines, but we'll go with power fit, as it seems to fit the data a bit better. You can see this line also gives us an equation, which lets us draw it out further into the future, and this is what that looks like. Right here is where George hits the 500 extra words he'd need to complete Winds, and the bad news is, this model predicts we won't get Winds until 2032. As George continues to slow down, we wouldn't get Dream until 2077, when George is 128 years old. This is basically us fans' nightmare scenario, where depending on George's health, we might not even get Winds, and almost certainly won't see Dream, leaving us stuck with the show ending or another writer stepping in. But there is one more model I want to go through. In a previous video, I explained why I thought Winds was so delayed. In short, complexity. The maths of complexity means a story like A Song of Ice and Fire gets exponentially harder to write and takes exponentially longer to write the more complex it gets. And A Song of Ice and Fire has been getting more and more complex book after book. Longer novels with more characters and more subplots slowing Martin down. But what if that's about to change? What if Martin has done the hardest yards on Winds, killing off characters, resolving side plots? What if Vagon and Euron and a bunch of others are already gone at this point? While I don't think Martin will ever regain the productivity he had in his 40s, which to be honest was pretty inhuman, what if he got back to the kinds of levels he had while writing Dance and Feast? It's hard to measure the complexity of a story in any objective way, but if we take the number of point of view characters as a proxy, we've seen that number steadily rise through the series, and from what I've read, there are probably around 21 of them going into Winds. That would explain why progress on Winds has been so slow so far. But what if, with a few hundred pages to go, we're now down closer to, say, an average of 14 POV characters for the rest of the series, like when he was writing Feast and Dance? Perhaps if that happened, he could get back to 164 pages a year. At that rate, we'd see Winds in the next 3 years, and A Dream of Spring in the next 10, when Martin is around 85 years old. That's still pretty old to be writing epic fantasy novels, but perhaps not beyond the realms of possibility, and it might be our best case scenario. So, when will we see the Winds of Winter? Well, in the best case, 3 years from now, in 2027, and in the worst case, 2032, another 8 years. Will we ever see A Dream of Spring? Maybe, but we'll have to wait at least another 10 years and the far future of 2034. In the worst case, we'll need to find a way to keep Martin writing until he's 128 years old in 2077, when a lot of us fans won't be alive to read it anyway.
I make joke.
To achieve the best case of finishing the series by 2034, Martin will need to radically reduce the complexity of the books to recapture some of his past productivity. Time is ticking. But what do you think? What are your predictions for when the Winds of Winter will blow, if ever? And are there any other scenarios you'd like to see modelled? Let me know in the comments below, and please do consider liking this video or subscribing to the channel, as it would really help me out. And until next time, keep writing.